everybody. Thank you so much for joining us once again for Phototherapy Saturday. My good friend Alec Aaron is here as a co-host, and we have a very special guest today, my friend George, and it's really never get pronouncing his last name correctly. Condojonis, I think, is the way you say it. Just a little bit of background on George. You know, I make my own prints. I have the Canon Pro 1000 here. Can make up to 17 by 22 prints. But George is a master printer. Now, if you're watching him, you'll see his face here because he gets embarrassed when I say this. I call George the Ansel Adams of printing because he's shaking his head. He gets a little embarrassed when I say this, but he is, Ansel Adams was a great photographer, but Ansel Adams was also an unbelievable printer. And George, when I go over there and I see these giant prints on his wall, 4 feet by 6 feet or whatever coming out of these giant printers, I'm just blown away. So today, George is going to offer some advice on how you, our listeners, can use printing as a phototherapy and also answer all your questions. So, Alec, you want to say a few words before we let Georgia hop on? Because I know we have a few questions.
We do have a few questions. I'm excited that George is here because George knows his stuff and he can help make the complex simpler for us. And I guess the first question, George, is people often ask, why doesn't my image look the same when I print it as it appears on my monitor? And what do I need to do to fix that?
Okay, so for starters, it always comes down to calibration. And it's very easy these days to buy, like a package of fine art paper and download from the manufacturer a pretty high quality profile with instructions on how to apply it. Where people, I think, are missing the boat is in monitor calibration. I'm actually working on a training video for monitor calibration. I don't know if any of you saw the recent class I did with Joel Grimes, the Print Masters class. We spent a lot of time on calibrating for monitor for the purpose of printing. And I've gotten some feedback from that, and that, okay, the prints are matching better, but now I don't really like anything else I do. But what people don't understand is that whether it's a laptop or a monitor or whatever it is you're doing or using, these devices that are built to service all kinds of industries, and they all have different standards. So if you're, editing for video, it's a completely different viewing condition and editing and calibration condition than it would be for making a print. A lot of people are shooting their cameras and processing their raw files into Adobe 98. Adobe 98 has a D65 white point. One of the reasons I'm doing this new video is I went online and I looked at X-Rite, because they're my preferred calibration tools and software, but I found, I think it was 234 videos on monitor calibration, and I went
therein lies my frustration, is that if you were to Google it, everybody has an opinion. It's sort of like Rick, a Photoshop instructor.
Right, and the reality is I'm a master colorati. I don't know if it's like Canon has their Explorers group and Sony has their Artisans, whatever. X-Rite has their colораtis and their master colораtis. So I am a master colorati. But there are there's not that many, but there's guys out there that I know and respect, and their opinion and everything I agree with, except the problem I'm seeing is when I looked at the X-Rite videos that are out there, there's Joe Brady has some really incredibly good monitor calibration videos, but the first one that comes up, what came up first because it probably has the most number of hits, right, is from 2013. So, if you happen to miss that date issue, okay, and look at and follow his step-by-step guide, as accurate as it is, it's based on older technology. There was a point where a typical monitor had a hard time reaching the minimum requirement of 80 candela or CMD square, which is the same as nits, but it had a hard time reaching that, and they were pushing sRGB. So this incredible video that I watched, it's like a half-hour long video. I loved everything about it. When he got to the point of you have to be at 80 candela, you have to be, whatever he was talking about, as accurate and true as it is, and as great as he is, the information's 7 years old. The monitors today are reaching 1,000 nits. The ISO recommendation for print condition, if you look in the X-Rite software, and sadly, even X-Rite's newest video that I could find, they were recommending like 100 now. But if you look at the ISO reference print condition, they're recommending 160. So even though there's hundreds of videos out there, everybody has an opinion. Almost all of the ones that I've seen are really geared towards a person who's never done it before, and they will bring you to a nice neutral. And it's a lot better than opening up a laptop. You buy a new Mac Pro, and it's set for 900 nits, and it's bright and blue and contrasty, and there's no way that's going to match the printer. And it's if you use a monitor calibration tool on that, it's strictly a software calibration. So having a monitor that, for one, is capable of doing what you're trying to do, two, setting it to a print condition is almost none of the videos that I've seen actually show you how to do it for a print condition. They're all targeting Adobe 98, has a D65 white point. If you download, one of the, you go to one of the better companies like a Hahnemühle, you fine art paper. I said that because it's sitting in front of me. I've got some of the new natural line stuff. This hemp paper and this agave. Whatever. Some of these papers that I'm working on right now, I happen to be in love with. But as fine as those profiles are that you download from the website, every single one of them, if you open it in ColorSync and look at it, they're all a D50 white point. So everybody's...
George, so you're talking about D50 white points, D65. Some of our members, like if I was talking music and I said, you know what, I'm going to go over and play my guitar. I'm going to use a 147-6251, but I'm going to substitute, and this is true, the turnaround, the 7, I'm going to use a 13th chord. This wouldn't make some people might not get what I'm talking about.
Especially to simplify it, okay. What I would say is that even though people are buying monitor calibration tools, most of the instruction that's out there is going to give you a very good neutral, okay, but they're not geared specifically for print. They're geared for general purpose. There are settings in there, and the video that I'm producing, I actually plan on going into serious detail of what it is you need to do to match a print. And one of the things right off the bat is, like I said, if you're shooting in Adobe 98, okay, and then you're trying to make a print, when I say the white point, people would understand, and if they're shooters on any level, you understand what 6500 Kelvin is bluer than 5000 Kelvin, which is slightly different than D50, but the printer profiles are, unless you make it yourself or do something to it, they're all in the D50 world. And D50 is slightly different than 5000 Kelvin, because Kelvin, only measured the blue-red scale of the spectrum. D50 refers to the full spectrum, and it's basically a neutrally balanced spectrum. the old days of a light bulb, you had a tungsten light in your house. They were very yellow, and
Right.
fluorescent lights were very green. But when they started adding gases and things like that to lamps, you also had to, um, consider the magenta factor. There were other issues, so they went
So,
from.
so George, when will the video be done? It's not, you're
I
working
don't know
on
if one
it.
of you guys would help me. It could be done pretty quickly. I mean, it's a lot of work, but um, if any of you have taken the Print Masters class that I did with Joel Grimes, I went into how to do it, set up the monitor on his
Okay.
laptop for a printing condition.
But you know
But
what?
but it was
Before,
the people that saw that are the ones that are coming to me saying, okay, it does match my print, but now I
But now
really
I have
can't
these
stand
other,
watching a
right.
movie. So I want to try to get out. What I'm trying to get out there is that there are many conditions. If you went out and bought the new $5,000 Apple monitor, okay, it's not Adobe 98. It's a P3 color space now, which is bigger than Adobe 98. So you can actually see Adobe 98, but that's still not your print condition. You would still need to calibrate that to a print condition. So I happen to be a big fan of Azos. I don't know if you can see behind me. There's these are
Yeah.
Azo monitors back here, and the ones that I have are self-calibrating, and I feel lucky that I'm in a situation where I have the best of both worlds. I have the X-ray tools, so I can take an X-ray spectrophotometer, which is better than the sensor that's built into the machine, set the baseline calibration for the machine, and then have the monitors do their own calibration. I have mine to go off every morning. So you
Every
don't.
morning.
Yeah, I do every morning because it does it before I come in, and I get a pass fail. If I fail, it tells me I got to look at something, and if I don't see that, I know I'm good. And
well,
I don't know if you can see it on the video, but I have one set up here for D50, and the other one is labeled D65 because I do have to produce images for people that want to see it on the web, and I need to see what the change is going to be. And there is no reason to have just one setting. Is there a way to share this screen for a second?
there is, but I have a couple of questions before we do
Okay.
that. And if we
Okay.
get to do that, first of all, about you get the reminder to basically tune your monitors. Someone asked my brother once, how often do you tune your guitar? It's like a funny question. You tune your guitar before you play it every time, so that's important.
That's what I do.
But people are looking at your setup there. You have $1,000 monitors with the hoods on them that cost a few bucks. You have probably the best calibration devices in the world. For someone to get started, I use the Color Monkey Photo, which is
Color
a small.
photo or the studio. You're talking about 150, 200, up to maybe a $500 device.
Yep.
People spend 2-3 times that on a decent lens.
Right.
And it doesn't make sense to not have some kind of a calibration for your viewing condition. I mean, even to see the files that you shot, if you make any kind of a correction on an uncalibrated monitor, you don't know if you're doing more harm than good. So and investing in a monitor gives you the ability to see the real contents of the file. One of the problems with most laptops is a modern day. I'm a Macer. I have PCs here too because I have to support clients that have PCs. But when I sit down to do something for me, I always sit down to a Mac. And it's not even anything you can do on a Mac these days. You can also do on a PC. But I still sit down to my Mac. But on a Mac laptop, doesn't matter what model you buy, how fancy you get, the best possible screen it has. The reality is it's you have a video board with a lookup table. You don't have contrast control. The only thing they give you is brightness control. So even though you can run a calibration on a laptop, which I do for, I recommend any photographer that's working with a laptop in the field, it should also be calibrated. You're relying on the profile only to try to get you close to your destination target. When you talk about these expensive monitors behind me, they have video boards in them. And so if I toggle between my different settings, I'm not just using the profile. I have actual real contrast control, real gamma control. There's no gamma control anymore on a laptop. It just doesn't exist. It's the profile trying to get as close as it can. But a good monitor will pay for itself in paper. It'll pay for itself in time. It'll, and you need a monitor that's capable of seeing more than you're trying to produce, so you're not clipping, and you just can't do that on a laptop.
Well, this is why I have you, because when I make my prints off my Canon printer, off my MacBook Pro, I'm actually using my laptop. But getting back to the calibration devices, we also need to calibrate our printer, right? Like I use the Color Monkey. I remember, it prints out samples and you scan it. Do you calibrate your printers? And should our listeners calibrate their printers too?
I think it's critically important that photographers do their own printing. So it's an investment to do custom profiling, right? Depending on what kind of paper you're buying. A lot of the major manufacturers, like if you buy, if you buy a Canon Pro 1000, for instance, and you use the Canon paper with the Canon profile, it's already 98% there. Okay, I've actually made my own custom basic profile and did gamut mappings to compare them. And I find that not just Canon, but Canon and just about all of them, they're just slightly conservative, and I think they do that to protect themselves about the small amount of variance in production from machine to machine. So they're tiny bit smaller than if you made one yourself. If you took a Color Monkey and you or the i1 Studio, I think it's called now, the latest version of that. If you did that on your machine under your working conditions, your environment, you will get the same or better than what you can download already. And generally, it's going to be just a little bit better because it's your exact machine. Now, whether you choose to do that or not, I obviously recommend everybody do that. But to go the next step to what I would consider the custom profiling, and things like I've done for you, Rick, where you came, you come with these like incredible pictures from Antarctica, right? And I have it's an honor when you come with me and I get the artist's eyes, because I'm not a shooter, right? I'm a technician, and you're a great printer already, and I know. I see your prints, I see what you do already. You do spectacular printing. I think, if anything, you come to me because of size, but, I have 8 wide format machines, and you're not going to have that in your studio. Most people won't.
It's not only the size, you get, you have, do you have that filter thing handy where George has this little device that has...
It's dinosaur bones, Rick. You're talking about the color viewing filters?
Yeah, and what you do, it's dinosaur bones, but he holds it so you could see how a print will look under different lighting conditions. So there's little filters. So it's, it would be like basically wearing, glasses like this.
Yeah, I have quite a collection of gelatins and things like that that go back to the film days. Some of them are 20 years old. So they're gelatin, they do fade. I don't go by the number on them, but if I pick up a 10 magenta and it's faded and it's really only an 8.5 or whatever, it still tells me am I going in the right direction. So I might flash it just to see what it's doing to like a flesh tone, and then I go back and make my corrections.
Yeah, I was really surprised when you showed me that. I was very, very surprised. You mentioned something before about sRGB. So, going back to the very beginning of shooting, when with the cameras, you could choose, sRGB, Adobe RGB. I think Pro Photo is one. How would you advise people to set their cameras to get the best color? And do you advise using devices like the Passport Color Checker?
Well,
which is like
the Color Checker is a reference that I can't live without. And there's a few things.
It was a trick question because I knew the answer.
Well, the Color Checker is I think anybody who's out in the field and not carrying one is making a mistake. Light changes all day long, and you can actually shoot that and get your perfect white balance and so on. A lot of people say, well, you don't really need that. I'm going to make my adjustments in Photoshop until I like it anyway. All right, but I think part of what they miss is the ability to communicate that information. So something that I don't know if I should call it a trick or what, but if you shoot and with that target and make a camera raw profile and then neutralize your file before you start all your artistic corrections, right? You can actually cut out that color checker that is perfectly neutral, right? And then when you finish all your flavor corrections, right, and paste it back in, then that neutral perfect target that's now pasted back in is a reference that I can read and know that when I get those target numbers perfect, whatever the picture looks like, it's the way you wanted it to look. So if you just shoot the target and then neutralize it, a lot of times people say it works against you. Like if you're shooting a sunset and you white balance off of that, it makes the sunset look like a midday day. It takes all the flavor out. But if you shoot that sunset and you process that target out, make all your corrections to the flavor you want, and then paste that back in and send that to me, you'll get the color of the sunset you want. It's partially for communicating, and the finer photographers that are building archives for the future, if you don't put some kind of reference back in that file, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, somebody's going to print that. They're going to print it the way it looks good to them. They're not going to have a way of knowing what it looked like to you. So all the archive stuff that I work on has some kind of a reference. The same way in the pre-press, they put in control strips for general photography. I use the color checker Passport. And there's color checkers for every size and every type of work. I mean, they make these big giant ones now that you can lay on the floor if you're shooting from a drone, because that little one is going to be readable.
Be tough.
But they make ones that have gloss and a lot more colors and patches on purpose that are repeated, like the whites in the corners. So you could actually, if you're doing copy work, you can see if the light was even just by reading the four corners. It has glossy or non-glossy strips, which you can read or not read depending on what you're actually shooting. So you're getting a better match. If you're shooting a shiny car, then you want some shiny reference patches.
Speaking of shiny, another question we get asked a lot is, what type of paper should I use? And I was going to wear my shirt that Alec knows about, and the shirt says it depends. right? And I suggest, just like with the plugin, right? There are a lot of different plugins that our members use. And I said sometimes the subject suggests the plugin, like if it's a landscape, maybe you want to use like an artistic, impressionistic plugin. If you want to, if you're doing a portrait, it might be a different type of plugin. So for plugins, it depends. So I think, what's your advice for paper,
I guess the my best advice would be to, without spending a lot of money, you can contact any of the manufacturers and get sample books. And there's big giant ones like, I just happen to be working on 2 new Hahnemühle papers. I am a certified fine arts studio from Hahnemühle, and I'm proud of that. It was one of the toughest certifications to get. I'm certified by other companies as well, like Canson and and so on. But they have these big giant sample books where you can actually feel the weight of the paper. I don't know why, but people have to touch everything instead of just looking at it with their eyes. But you can get a very good taste of the paper with and without images. But these big giant books are very, very expensive. They make little. They're not easy to come by. I'm a certified studio, so I was honored to be given one. But they make these little books that are samples. It's enough to see the surface of the paper.
Almost, I don't mean to interrupt, but almost like when you go to look at paint samples, right?
Yeah,
I've seen books that look like little swatches of the
exactly. They are chips, and every one of the major manufacturers, Canson, Hahnemühle, Canon, they all. You can contact any of them, Moab, whoever, whatever level you're looking for, you can get paper samples to start. Then most of the companies also, once you decide on a class of paper, if you're going to go in the fine art direction, most of them, not everybody, but they'll offer sample packs where there'll be 5 sheets of 3 to 5 different kinds of paper in a pack, and you order one of those. It's very inexpensive compared to buying even 25 sheets of one type, and then you find out you don't like it. But and then when you buy those sample sets, you also can download the can profiles directly from the manufacturer, and they're quite good to start and look at it. I have a little wall of samples here. I think you've seen it, Rick, where I have a lot of different papers, a lot of different textures. I try to repeat the same image as much as I can, but some images just don't work. And I don't know, it's been probably over a year, but remember, Rick, when I did that big giant iceberg shot of yours on that metallic paper from Canon? I was so excited about the way it looked. It was so realistic and so alive that I asked you to come over and look at it. Right?
I don't know if people can see it, but I'm turning over to the.
No, not quite.
Not quite. Anyway, I have that.
That was actually the contact sheet from that series, but we took one and made it as big as that whole contact sheet.
No, I know. It was.
And it was mind-boggling, and it happened to be like a piece used in a Canon show, but that same image on another paper that I'm in love with doesn't do that. So I can't. People ask me all the time, "What's your favorite paper?" I often will print the same image on a few different papers, and look at that final flavor. Look at that final color. They're all a little bit different. I happen to I favor portraiture. I favor warmness. I favor things like that. But I'm not a photographer, so I never make that decision for another person. I always insist that they look at a few. I have the ability to test on many different papers, and
here's the
there
print.
It is.
Yeah.
Walk it back.
Yeah, too much glare.
Got to walk it back.
I can't because of my headphones. But you can
Okay.
see how big it is. It's this is why I go to George. It's
Yeah, but
amazing.
you can't even see the quality of it on the video. I mean, that image just screams quality. The color, the resolution, the detail. You know, it's just, I loved it. And I printed so many of your other images too, but I can't say that, you know, like some of your safari pictures, I would never print on that paper.
Right.
You know, I would print it on something I like and ask you to look at it, and you would say, "Well, the paper's too warm, the paper's too cold, the paper, you know, it's too glossy," and ultimately you would make the decision, and that's what it would be printed on.
I
And
think that's one
that,
reason why people go to you because I think uh, consciously, subconsciously, because this is your life, right?
well,
I'm a
totally
photographer.
do.
You're a printer.
Yeah,
No, and
yeah.
this is what I'm hearing consistently, right? Is that it's the marriage of the technical elements of printing with the vision of the artist,
No.
right? Is that George can know what looks good from a technical standpoint, but is it the artist's vision? And I think that's what everybody on here that plays around with the printer in next to their laptop, right, struggles with, right? So it's what looks best to you. And I'm hearing even on the paper front, have multiple papers, try, and you'll maybe surprised by what you get
You're gonna
in
find
testing it.
if you do a lot of your own printing, and I really recommend that people do the bulk of the printing themselves, even if they need an exhibition print. I'm very happy when they come to me with a print that they made and they love, and I just have to make it big. Because if I can see the flavor, I can see the style, I can see the paper that they chose. But you're gonna find in general that most people are gonna narrow it down to just a few papers. Unfortunately, picking those few papers is a process of testing as many as you can get your hands on. Uh, but I don't know too many photographers that actually use 10 different kinds of paper. You know, I know guys that, you know, they pick one and that's it. That's their paper.
I have three.
Uh,
I have a cotton paper, I have a semi-gloss paper, and I have a glossy paper. But George, I want to get back to something you said when you came over here once. And it's about the profiles and the importance of the profiles. You came over with a stick, with the thumb drive, because this is when I was getting into printing. This was about 3 years ago. And you said, I'm going to download some profiles for you. Let me know if I'm exaggerating. My guess is there were more than 100 profiles on that
oh,
stick.
I have so many machines and so many papers and do so much testing. And you had asked earlier about making your own profile
Yeah.
and custom profiling. One of the things that I do um, when I generate my first round of profile, uh, I save all my measurement data, and I keep my printing conditions pretty much the same. So that data is valid for a long time. But one of the softwares that I use is called i1 Profiler, and one of the things that it allows you to do is it allows you to do what they call iterations. So I can measure a target and generate the generic profile, which is the same or slightly better than the canned profile from the manufacturer. But once I have that, then I can start making adjustments to it through iterations. And it allows me to import colors from an image. So let's say, like your ice image, that the profile that did that was an iteration, because what I do is the software will pull 20 patches of color out of that image and add it to the existing target. I print it, and then instead of the profile using the existing data points, it makes specific data points for colors that are in that particular image. And it's not starting from scratch where I have to read thousands of patches and do all kinds of things to it. I'm taking the existing set that I read and adding specific colors from your image into that profile. And then at the same time, it allows me to do edits to that. And so I'm basically taking what you start off with as the canned profile, and I'm editing it to match the flavor of the image. So in general photography, you don't see much of a difference. But if you happen to be doing, let's say, a black and white image, I think I did one image for you. That's when you started calling me Ansel Adams, which kind of, I still out of respect for him, I don't think that's right. But um, but part of what made that image unique and getting that tonal range that we talked about is I took the RGB profile from the RGB file that you gave me, okay, and the black and white converted file, and I used the black and white converted file to do one of the iterations of the profile. So the profile actually had 20 extra data points for the blacks in your image. And then we did a refinement on that, which just just brings it that much closer. And even though it started off as a generic profile, it became a very custom profile for that type of image. And I find that very easy to do. It doesn't take very long to do it. And it makes a dramatic difference. It obviously made you happy. So it's the difference between a canned profile and something that's customized for a particular output or a particular flavor. And I have, portrait photographers that have a style to their flesh tone or a look. I have, people like a certain kind of saturation, certain kind of contrast, certain whatever. So I can build those things into a profile or adapt the profile so that they can do it themselves. And anybody can do this themselves in their own studio, but some of it requires an investment in instrumentation and software. But even the i1 Studio, which I think is like in the $500 price range, roughly. If you're spending $3,000 on a camera,
Right.
it's not a lot of money to buy an instrument that will give you a perfect calibration on your screen and allow you to make a custom profile. I recommend everybody do that. I want people to do that and get the print as close as they can get it before they come to me. Otherwise, everything I do becomes too expensive. If the files are clean and prepped. I mean, if Rick, you bring me a file, right? You've come to visit where you bring me a file and you walk out of here with a print,
Yeah.
right? Because the files are coming in perfect. They're, if anything, we're making a tweak for a particular paper change.
So the opposite of that is garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage out, right.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah, no, but
so
you prep your files in a way that it just makes it easy. So you wouldn't be able to give me those kind of files if you didn't calibrate your monitor and profile your camera and all of that. All of that works because besides the thousands you spend on the camera, you take care of the other pieces. And as far as monitors go, one of the newest monitor calibration things that's actually on the X-Ray website, and that has a good explanation about how I think they were using a BenQ monitor in the video. The monitor isn't capable of actually hitting Adobe 98 or the new P3 or Rec 709 or any of these other standards, and so they did a good job of showing how close you can get, and they actually have models of what it is, but you can't change the output of a display through software only. Which is why I'm an ISO lover, or ASO. I don't know how to say it right. I think it's ASO. But the ASO monitor is software and hardware. It's actually got a video board in there with lookup tables, LUTs. And so you can actually have full control over contrast. And to give you an idea, numbers that are easy to understand, that everyone should understand, if your iMac comes out of the box at 1,000-to-1 contrast ratio. The reference print condition for like pre-press, or effectively saying what can a press actually do, they're under 400-to-1 contrast ratio. So it's that far apart, right? And so being able to have a contrast control that just doesn't exist on a laptop, it doesn't exist on most monitors. If you buy a desktop monitor that's made for a home office, it still doesn't have contrast control. It still doesn't have a video board on it. It's still being driven. A lot of people buy them, they plug it into their laptop. You buy a monitor that has that kind of capability built into the monitor itself, then you can plug it into your Mac Pro and still have a hardware software solution with all those kind of controls. So you can literally make it as bright and contrasty as you want, or I call it dumbing it down to print. But the reality is you're using a fraction of the capabilities of what the display can do, but it's what's going to come out of your printer, and it still looks great on screen.
Hey, George, Jack Resnicki just joined. He's a member of the phototherapy group.
Sure.
I know you've made some prints for Jack. Thanks, Jack. I've learned a lot from Jack. He started out, I knew him as a studio photographer, but he also does some amazing travel work. Unless he's a nice guy. He's an expert on legal stuff, photo legal stuff. So seriously, for any of our members who want to know about legal questions, you could ask Jack legal questions. He has his own site. Jack, if you could type in what your website is here to answer legal questions. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, Jack. But in addition to that, Tommy Armstrong, who was one of our guests here, and we're coming down the home stretch here because we're a little over on our time here, but Tommy has a good point here. Tommy says, I have found for much of the weird stuff I print, well, he does beautiful stuff. So I'm going to substitute the word beautiful. No, I'll stay. He says, I found for much of the weird stuff
abstract.
I print.
How about abstract?
Abstract. Right. Stuff that he prints, that metallic works well because it changes under different lighting conditions. It even reads very well in low light, which I like in normal light and in bright light. So this is a good point. All different, but it reads. I bet the iceberg picture looks good in really low light on metallic paper. So I think the lighting conditions, like we were talking about the gels that you use, George, that the lighting conditions in which two things. The lighting conditions in which we're going to view the picture is important. Whether it's going to be, opposite a window that might be reflectors is important. But my main question is, and we'll start with this because I know I'm going all over the place asking all these questions. Right now I have my fluorescent lights in my office turned on. When I print, I have them turned off. How important is the room light if you calibrate your monitor? Does it matter if like a bright window's opened or?
Well, yeah, of course. I before I started this session, I put on my gray oversized shirt. It's almost like a lab coat size shirt. I buy them 3 sizes bigger, and it's literally like a lab coat. I won't sit in front of my monitor in a pink striped shirt or a Hawaiian shirt while I'm working. You can't really see the room, but you've been here. I have gray curtains.
Yeah.
My walls are painted a Munsell N8 gray paint that I bought from GTI. It's a neutral reflectance paint. I try to keep the room light dimmer than the monitor is the main thing. You don't want to make the room too dark because your pupils open up and it's going to affect how you see the screen, and you don't want it too bright because it's going to work the other way around. And yes, the surround is very important. If you have fluorescent lights, eventually they'll be replaced by LEDs because you're not going to have a choice soon. but you'll have daylight LEDs, but even those, there's only a couple that are actually manufactured that have what's called full spectrum. A lot of the original fluorescents were very, very green. If you took a color meter and read the ambient light with fluorescent light, you'd be shocked how much green there is.
Right.
So yeah, the surround is important. Generally, what I recommend to people, unless you're going to invest in like a lab grade situation, which most people will not, just make sure the room has some light in it, so that your eyes are not being strained for too dark or too light, and make sure that your screen is your primary light. Your screen should be slightly brighter than the room, but there should be some room light.
Speaking of that, I remember also the first time you came over here, and I think most of our viewers, and we're going to have to wrap it up after this because we got to get going soon. But most of our viewers have their monitor brightness set to the max. And I remember when you came over here, you were very kind. You turned down the monitor brightness a lot.
Well, I think we were playing on a laptop at the time, and we weren't really going for that, perfect print condition,
right?
So I wanted to share my screen before. I wanted to show you one of the features of the AZO, because it has because it's a software hardware calibration system. I can make custom settings for many different conditions. So I have my custom print condition setting, but I don't want to watch a YouTube video in that setting.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
It's too yellow, it's too dull, it's too dark, so on that monitor, that all I have to do is launch, just click on what I'm doing. So I have my print condition and I have my general viewing condition, and that's something that people miss. You can do that to a certain degree on a laptop, but it doesn't have the hardware integration, so you can't just toggle from one to the other. You can run the calibration for one and then waste another 20 minutes or so and run it again for another. People get tired of doing that. So they wind up not doing it, as opposed to having it built in where it's literally click to a different condition and you're there. And also, the reality is most of the laptops and things like that are still too small a gamut, and since you don't have the real gamma control, gamma, if you if you just go to Photoshop and pull up the exposure layers window, there's a gamma slider there, and if you just slide that back and forth, you'll get a good understanding of what gamma is all about, because it's basically the amount of separation between your blacks and your whites. And if you don't have a display that can show, let's say you choose the 2.2 gamma, but the monitor isn't really capable of doing it, the profile is going to try to do the best it can, but you're most likely not seeing a lot of information in your shadows. So when you try to correct that in Photoshop and then you go to print it, you lost the rich black. So you need a monitor that you can see it. On my monitor, I can see a rich black and I can see my details in my blacks. I can, I trust it because it's got a larger overall gamut than what I'm printing, right? And so I see everything.
So the end of the story is print, right? You have to print your pictures and a lot of people don't realize that, what really drove the whole digital revolution was the inkjet printer, that it put the control back in the photographer's hands. Yes, we could send our pictures out, and yes, they have, automatic color corrections and all this stuff. But, I know Alex actually suggested this topic because I know he's really into printing because it's very therapeutic. and it's very rewarding. So, George,
it's exhilarating, right? And
it's
I guess-
exhilarating.
I know, Rick, you wanna. I know you want to wrap up, but I just want to make 2 quick points. One, when you calibrate, I believe you have to have the monitor on for a while. You just don't want to turn the monitor on fresh and calibrate. You want it to be up and running for a while.
Again, the commercial machines, the better monitors will actually warm up before they start the calibration process. You'll actually see a progress bar. They will monitor themselves. They will adjust even for temperature changes and things like that. They will prevent things from changing, from overheating. So that's investing in a good monitor. To me is worth it if you're real serious about your printing.
Right,
but,
and that gets to my, and that George gets to. I'm sorry, it gets to my second point. This whole conversation reminds me of my teens and my early 20s when I was buying stereo equipment, and it all came down to the speakers. If you didn't have good speakers, it didn't matter what kind of stereo equipment you bought. And if you went out and bought, an equalizer or a range expander and all this other nonsense, if your speakers were still not good speakers, it wasn't going to help the music. So
that's a great analogy.
I come from the school. I'm old enough that I guess going back to the Ansel Adams stuff. I grew up that it's not a photograph till it's a print, right? And so I encourage people to print. Everyone should be printing.
I totally
great
agree.
Way to end.
And it's a great way to end. Again, this
Rick,
will be.
If you want to share my contact information, if you have people that are out there that need a little extra help, things are quiet. The world we live in right now. I'm not traveling into Manhattan every day. I'm around. I can answer an email. I'm glad to help somebody.
So what is your contact information? What's your website?
The gcondos@mac.com.
Okay, I will. Since it's harder to spell than pronounce.
Okay.
I will. So it's okay to give people your email, or just want them to contact you through your website?
If they're part of your world, Rick, anytime, always.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll do what I can to help, but there's a stipulation. If you want me to help you print a file or do something, and you haven't calibrated your monitor yet, don't even call me.
Okay, that's great.
There you go. Fair enough.
Somewhere.
Fair enough.
Okay, George, thank you so much. We want to thank Jim. He said thanks for the good information. Linda Denise, we're going to post your information. I'm going to share the iceberg picture. Jack Resnicki, it's called the copyrightzone.com. Jack, feel free to post a picture of the view and Ed. They painted in, I don't want to spoil it, but they have a fun picture. So feel free to post that. I love these live sessions, and I want to thank everyone again. And the next live session is Linda Marshall, Monday's meditation at noon. And Wednesday we have a very, very special show. We have the Big Cat Man live from Nairobi, Kenya, and we're going to have the Big Cat conversation with the Big Cat Man. So thank you all so much for joining us. And George, you were great, and I can't wait to see you in person. George only lives 10 minutes away, and I haven't seen him since.
I miss you too.
Okay, my friend.
All right, thanks, George.
All right, everyone be safe.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.